Hey there, everybody. It's meteorologist Jamie Singleton, 9:06 now, the 12th of February, 2021. And we're looking at a potentially very dangerous situation. I'd like to thank my sponsor for getting me on the air with this, Whistler Plumbing and Air. All your plumbing needs, all your heating and air needs, and especially now with this freezing rain and major ice storm that we could have developing over the area in the coming few hours. We got a little bit of a radar issue that was planned, and we'll continue to get by without the Blacksburg radar for the next week or so. Planned maintenance going on there, but we can tell that there's an increase in moisture from the south. And I first want to start you out with some of these alerts. Also want to draw your attention to the fact that if some of the near-term models are correct, we could be looking at ice accretion, radial ice accretion, which, by the way, so let's take a, where's the pencil at? So this is a tree limb, all right? And on one side, you've got 2/10 of an inch of ice. On the other side, you've got 2/10 of an inch. That's 2/10 of an ice, 2/10 of an inch of ice accretion. So what you have to do is really multiply that by 2 and you get the width of the ice for the whole branch. But the way you measure radial ice accretion versus flat ice is you take one side or both sides and you take an average. Usually because of gravity, there's a little bit in the direction of rainfalls, there's one side that has a little bit more ice. No, it's a little bit confusing. What you need to know is that when we get to 1/4 of an inch of ice accretion, 0.25 radial ice accretion, that's when we start seeing trees coming down, tree limbs coming down, and they hit the power lines. And actually, the power lines themselves won't come down. A lot of the trees will knock, do most of that damage. Any lineman will tell you that. But that's what we're looking for. Okay, and that's the concern. That's why the National Weather Service in Blacksburg has upgraded the area from Lynchburg all the way up into Amherst County, and the Sterling office there, adding Nelson County as well. Buckingham County, Amherst, Appomattox, Lynchburg City. Doesn't include Roanoke. This is the winter storm warning in pink. Now, I'm going to tell you that the impacts are going to be the same. This is a preference via the forecaster in Blacksburg versus the forecaster in Wakefield on what to call this. The impacts are going to be 1/4 of an inch of ice to as much as 1/3 to 1/2 inch of ice accretion. And remember, that's radial ice accretion on one side. So if we get to 0.5, we're really looking at 1 inch on both sides of a tree limb. That's a lot if you count both sides, and that would be almost devastating if we get to that. And that's where the Weather Service is going, and they're conservative. They're conservative for a reason, but if that's the conservative estimate, you need to know that there are some models out there, and I'll show you a few of them, but you can go to my Patreon and check it out right now, that have us way over that threshold. And so we'll talk about maybe our history too and our geography here, but I did want a quick update to show you that even in North Carolina counties here, down through Rockingham, Caswell, Person County, these areas also under a winter storm warning for that ice. Winter weather advisories are out for just about everybody else for lesser amounts of ice, 1/10 of an inch, maybe 2/10 of an inch, but really in here in the pink and in the purple, these are going to be the hard hit areas. That includes Richmond here, and once you get, far enough east, I like to tell folks what's going on from the Wakefield office because, if you're watching me, and some folks watch me in Appomattox, some folks watch me in Halifax, the Wakefield stuff is just right up the road from you. So, going to Mecklenburg County here and getting into Farmville and those places, it's an ice storm warning. But it's really for the same type of impacts. I feel like what they did at the Weather Service in Blacksburg, this would be an ice storm warning if not for the chance of some snow and sleet to get in here from time to time. And what that means is not completely all freezing rain, even though probably 95% of us are going to see freezing rain. So it was just a matter of preference on what to call it there. But if you go to their webpage, and I got to say, they are doing a good job. The Weather Service in Blacksburg is hiring some new folks, and they've got one guy I think used to work in television. They do these weather stories that you can click on their website here, and you can see kind of a neat graphic. It's a daily graphic that they put out telling you what's going on here, the second round moving on in. They update that every morning. But I'm going to go to our briefing page, or their briefing page, and show you what they have. And again, you got to remember there are conservative forecast usually here. So you're looking at the winter storm warning in effect again for these areas. Ice accretion up to ½ inch radial here. That's important. That's a lot of ice. Outside Roanoke, you're looking at again 1/10 to 2/10 of an inch, and maybe some sleet up to about 1/4 of an inch as well. So that's why some of this isn't totally an ice storm, but predominantly that's what the concern is. Now, if we get up into Lynchburg here, and this could include Franklin County too, we also see up to ½ inch and some sleet up to about a 1/4 of an inch. So it's a hodgepodge of winter weather, but predominantly the concern is definitely for the freezing rain. Now, if you go east, and again, we'll include the Wakefield area here. Let's see if they've got a different web page, but we'll click on winter weather. I feel like we'll have a similar map here coming up. They've got their ice forecast up, and you can see that they're forecasting over 1/4 of an inch to locally up to ½ an inch as well. So very similar impacts from both offices. And I want to go back to the Blacksburg office here because I want to show you their official forecast, which it gets your attention. There's a reason why this shows up as red on their ice forecast. It's because once we get into these red areas, that's where you're looking at, let me adjust the scale, this is where you're looking at 1/4 of an inch to as much as ½ an inch. So the areas that could include Roanoke, because what they do is they take a blend of models and they put in their own expertise, but locations I think are going to get hit hardest here from Floyd County into Franklin County. And we talk about the topography a lot when we talk about something like this because cold air sits very low to the ground. It's going to sit right up against the Blue Ridge Mountains. It's already out there. And the other complicating factor is we already have a little bit of sleet on the ground. We've got snowpack up here, right? And our winds are coming in over that snowpack tonight and tomorrow. So it's not going to warm up all that much, if at all. That's going to help refrigerate the lowest level of the atmosphere, and we'll be stuck in this sub-freezing air throughout most of the day on Saturday, into Saturday night, and maybe even into Sunday. That's as more moisture continues to fall. And we may have that problem again as we see this kind of a snowball effect, where we see something down the road that the models think will be rain, but because we have so much stuff on the ground in the form of ice and some sleet, it's going to refrigerate the air once again for the next system. And so it keeps adding up. We've got a lot to talk about here down the road as well. But, maybe Roanoke City there between, almost 15/100ths of an inch. But you look at the red areas here, South Boston into Danville. This is the bowl. You have the parkway right through here, goes up through Hardy and the Vinton area as well. Areas to the east that sit lower in elevation. If you took pancake syrup and you spilled it out on the table, it's going to kind of sit there in the lowest levels, and it'll be very, very hard to dislodge. So that is the concern because I don't see this looking like it's going to clear out anytime soon. That's a slow motion potential disaster is what I've been telling people. It won't be at all at one time. It takes time to get this frozen stuff out there and for it to continue to add up and accrete. But the concern is by tomorrow morning we could have a lot of ice out there and it could continue adding up into the afternoon. So this is a pretty aggressive forecast in my opinion. All right, there's going to be some higher amounts in here as well. But even that said, there is more coming on top of that if you look at some of the computer models. Let me show you what's going on right now. We'll show you the colder air and what's going on the National Weather Map. And the big area of high pressure still out here. This is the Arctic air. I've got the sub-freezing temperature at 5,000 feet, really the coldest of the air that shows us the potential for wintry precipitation there. Kind of highlighted there in blue, and it goes up to purple here. And you can see the active storm track here coming into Portland, Oregon. It hits this area of high pressure, turns to snow there, all the way up the west coast. This is from the same mound of cold air is giving Seattle and Portland their freezing rain and their ice. The same thing that happened in Texas with that awful accident and numerous disturbances still moving in, continuing to be part of what's giving us the cold area here. So it's a large and in charge area of high pressure. And look at all the moisture here. Look at all the lightning from the Gulf of Mexico. This is an energetic pattern. And what we're doing is we're taking tropical air off the Pacific Ocean, and we're taking it to the Gulf of Mexico as well, and we're moving it up and over this cold air here that's coming in from the northeast. Cold air coming down and the moisture coming up and over that. And we've got plenty of disturbances. I'll widen this back out here. You've got the system coming through tonight. There's actually two parts. There's a light part coming through right now with some freezing drizzle and freezing fog. The part down here to the south is going to come in late tonight into tomorrow morning. And it'll be cold enough for ice. And we've also got, if you look closely enough here in Albuquerque, Phoenix, see that little swirl right there? This is coming up by the time we go into Sunday and the Monday and Tuesday. And then we're watching another storm here off the west. You can barely see it on the edge of the picture. It's going to take the same route. So a lot to talk about. Let's look at our current temperatures real fast. We'll put them on for you. Some of them are going to show up kind of weird. This program does this every now and then, but it usually works itself out. Let me get rid of a couple of things. We'll do this, turn the satellite off, turn the mesoanalysis off, and we'll turn our high-res fill up. You can see the radar thinks it's snowing, but more than likely this is just freezing rain. 30 in Roanoke, 30 Lynchburg, 30 Danville. So we're not sitting at 32. 1 or 2 degrees makes a big difference when you talk about road conditions. And once you get below 30, or right around 30, you look for slick spots, especially bridges and overpasses. So not long after this video, I'm not going to rush home. I'm going to crawl home in my car because I fully expect that the deck out front here, which is wood, it's got air up underneath it here at the TV station, will be iced over once again. It already is from the previous storm, but the bridges and the overpasses and the colder sections of road that you may not be able to tell if it's a section of road that sees a lot of sunlight. But I can tell you that here at the TV station, a good way I look at that potential is in between the cable building here and our building. Sets this really shady hill, and a parking lot never really sees a lot of sun. And in fact, Webster Road, or Golden View Road out through here too, doesn't see a lot of sunshine, the intersection there. That's a very slick spot that I just happen to know about from working here most of my life. That's because it's north facing. It doesn't see a lot of solar radiation. And you actually get some solar radiation even on a cloudy day like today where temperatures were below freezing. It helps to keep the roads just wet. These temperatures are going to, pretty much be the same tonight, and we're going to introduce moisture to that once again. Now we've lost the solar radiation again, and instead of being around 32, we're around 30 this time. So I do expect that a lot of folks, asking me about travel conditions, I expect that to be an issue tonight. By around, say, 11 p.m. to midnight. So next few hours, it's going to get slick out there again. I had the scanners on last night, and I could hear all kinds of accidents on the interstate and on these are the major roads, on the interstates and some of the back roads as well. The freezing temperatures, by the way, go all the way down past Greensboro, Salisbury, North Carolina here, almost to Hickory, North Carolina, and all the way down, looks like to Asheboro there, into North Carolina. So this is a huge wedge, and again, the wind is all coming in out of the northeast at the surface, and that is continuing just to drive and reinforce this in. You got to remember they had, by the way, from Charlottesville to Richmond, they had 3 to 5 inches of snow here yesterday and last night. So you blow in wind over that snow, and it kind of gets chilled even more. And the fact that we've already got a little bit of sleet and freezing rain out there right now makes it even more of a concern. So let's take you through time. This is the freezing line according to the high-resolution NAM at 18Z, the 3-kilometer NAM. And you've got precip type here on the screen. I'm going to tell you what time this is. This is right now. And it's a pretty good look at what's happening right now. Temperatures, I can tell you the computer models do a very poor job at trying to pick out how cold it really is. All of these models are going to be a little too warm. All right. And so that's why I'm concerned this could last for a long time. But pretty much now it's a question of where does it rain into this cold air? Where do we get our freezing rain? That's going to show up into pink areas. So as we go into 9, 10 o'clock, we're going to see areas of mainly light to at times moderate freezing rain developing. Now remember, the radar is down, so on your app it may look kind of weird and blocky, or it may not be accurate. You just got to know what's out there, and it's one of those things where I'm going to rely on your reports once again throughout the night tonight. Things start to pick up after midnight. This is midnight. You can see that from Greensboro to Raleigh into South Side here, southern Franklin County, we're going to be seeing some freezing rain here, and this is again going to be falling into 30-degree air, maybe 29-degree air. Then the precipitation starts to increase in coverage and intensity by 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. So while we're sleeping, things are going to start to turn downhill pretty fast. The first part of tonight, kind of a slow motion kind of thing, and the whole process is slow. But overall, things after midnight into the early morning hours are going to pick up. We're going hour to hour. We're now at 4 a.m. You can see that most of the area, including now Roanoke and Lynchburg, seeing a heavier freezing rain event here. Floyd County all the way down into North Carolina, all the North Carolina area that I talk about usually, from Greensboro north into the northwest Piedmont, seeing the freezing rain. And even on the outskirts of Raleigh there, seeing the freezing rain. Richmond as well. Somebody was telling me, a couple of people, there's been a lot of concentration on Richmond with the ice potential. Listen, we're in the mountains, and we've got the Blue Ridge right here, and even the Appalachians back to the west. I think we could get hit harder than Richmond, and that's because in 1994 we had a really bad ice storm that particularly hit Franklin County. 80% of Franklin County was without power. We've got video of it here at the station, but it was one of those storms where it never changed back to rain. And Franklin County was able to keep that bowl of cold air near the surface as rain continued to fall. And it actually didn't fall all that hard. It was just that it kept falling and steadily freezing and accreting on the trees out there. And at some point, you could hear like gunshots going off. The trees were breaking. After that storm, you could look out. This was March 2nd, 3rd, 94, and just see the tops of the trees that snapped away. It was so devastating. And I hope we don't have that this time. It's on the table, though, okay, for somebody. And that could be near the Blue Ridge Parkway. It could be Floyd County this time. It could be a larger part of the area this time, and it may be a little bit less in some spots. But the potential is certainly there. Now, we go through the morning hours, and you can see it's still coming down out there. It breaks up the farther north you go into the Allegheny Highlands. So, maybe not as much freezing rain, but still you don't want too much to cause some issues. Just a trace will cause the accidents that we saw, of course, coming out of Texas, but last night here locally too. Going through the rest of the morning into the afternoon now. It's lunchtime. So at noon tomorrow, the freezing line is still to our south if you're in Roanoke and Franklin County, and it may change the rain in North Carolina. I'm not totally convinced of it warming up that fast because, again, this is something the models have a very hard time figuring out, and our mountains tend to protect the cold air more than you think. But that's some very steady rain that's continuing into the afternoon hours. Now the early afternoon, it's got us changing over by mid-afternoon at 3 o'clock to rain, unless you're in Lynchburg and Farmville and Charlottesville and even into Richmond. But I think this line's going to be down here across Franklin County, and I think Franklin County, Floyd County, Patrick County, Henry County is going to stay mainly freezing rain because it's going to be exiting at some point in the afternoon as well. And that will be another day, probably the rest of Saturday evening and the Saturday night. The winter storm warning continues, not because of the freezing rain falling all that heavily, but we're going to have a little spritzes of drizzle, freezing drizzle and freezing fog out there that'll keep adding to the weight of the ice very incrementally, very slowly, methodically. But that also will keep the roads very slick there as well. And we'll probably see the impact at that point, the trees starting to break, unfortunately, the limbs coming down, And the Weather Service even mentioned in this product here that, let's see, we've got widespread downed trees and power lines, consequently widespread power outages. It's important to note that significant and damaging accumulations of ice are expected across the Virginia Piedmont and to North Carolina Piedmont with this winter storm tonight and Saturday. Travel could be nearly impossible in some areas, not only from the ice-covered roads, but also from down the trees and power lines. So you may be in a situation, if you're brave enough to be out in this, where you not only have to worry about slipping and sliding, which is impossible even on four-wheel drive to get traction at a time like this, but also the fact that, a tree falling down can kill you. And unfortunately, that's something that's just random, it's like lightning. So what do? Well, if you have any way to get your car out from underneath a tree, or if you live in a home with trees around it, just be aware. Maybe go somewhere a little safer, to the basement or something where you're not near the roof, because those trees could come down in a situation like this. Pavement temperatures, we've got a little bit of mix showing up from VDOT here, their radar app here going through Southside right now. Pavement temperatures are around freezing. They're at 33 in Roanoke, but we're at 32 into Rockbridge County, 31 in Lexington on the Interstate 64 there, heading out of Lexington. And we're in the lower to middle 30s up and down 77. This is a very similar temperature profile to what we had last night. The reason I look at pavement temperatures is I want to see where we're going to start our road situation and how quick it may turn to ice. So we're right on the edge of seeing the ice on the roads if we haven't seen them already on the back areas there. And again, we'll continue to see that go downhill throughout the evening and especially the overnight. We actually do have a whole array of power outages from this system. All the way back across the west and to Texas as well. This is all from ice. Kentucky and the West Virginia. That also kind of has me worried because I think we've got some crews in from out of town. I heard we had about 200 from Ohio here locally. But other parts of the country are having the same issues that we're having with this ice. So, there's only a certain amount they have to worry about their own area of help we can get here locally. This part of West Virginia has been hit particularly hard with tens of thousands out without power. Now, locally, we had the power blink at my house today in Franklin County. We've actually got 650 or 660 some power outages out in Franklin County. Same story, let's see, 16 out. Okay, I'm sorry, fewer than 5 in Franklin County. There are 660 some cases of power outages, most of those again in West Virginia. So very spotty right now, but this will be the map to go to and kind of see what's going to be happening throughout the late night hours of tonight. This is the big area of high pressure here, and you can see it takes up a ton of real estate. It's flooding out of the Arctic here, crossing the poles from Siberia, crossing into Canada. It's been sitting over Canadian provinces here for a long time, and you can see the higher numbers there showing just the coldness of the air. It's very dense, and so it gives you a very high pressure reading if you're measuring the weight of the air. But you can see it wedging down. See that wedge formation right there? That's the cold. And you can see the low pressure in the Gulf of Mexico, an inverted trough here. This is off the Euro, by the way, for tonight. But you can see the expanse of this just mound of air at the surface. It's like spilling maple syrup. So remember, we've got geography. We've got mountains holding all this in place. So what you see here is the effect of the Appalachian Mountains, and this is the Rocky Mountains. These are the Rocky Mountains here. It hits that, and instead of going, some of it gets through up here across the Pacific Northwest, but it hits the Rockies and it drives southward. And that's why all the way down to the Red River Valley, all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, we're looking at freezing rain as well. Now, on top of that cold air, this is the active storm track. Again, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 disturbances and another one there off the left side of the screen. And these are all rotating around. And as they rotate around, they're following the storm path, which is down through the southern United States Four Corners area. You can see it opening up from the Gulf of Mexico there as well. This is another visualization of it. Hard time talking tonight. I didn't get my nap in today. You're looking at winds, satellite-derived winds, with the cloud cover. So that jet stream is adding dynamics. It did that last night too. It'll be adding dynamics with each wave that moves in. You can see the flow of moisture at the low levels there in the yellow and the blue, helping to pump all this moisture into the area. And of course, at the surface, what you can't see on this map is the cold air draining in from the northeast, creating that setup there. It's a clash of air masses, and it's just incredible to watch. Other than a blizzard, it's hard to get a system more impactful that across a big part of the country and locally than a major ice storm. That's one of the worst things Mother Nature can throw at you. And again, this will be in several phases. We're in really the second phase of the overall pattern here tonight. The colors on the screen represent two different types of air masses. And again, this is moisture-rich tropical air in green and in the orange. And you've got purple here, this Arctic air that's undercutting this moisture. You can actually see a hint of it there. So the two are, again, kind of combining over the area with numerous disturbances that will bring additional moisture in later into Sunday into Monday. And then again, maybe in Tuesday and next Thursday and Friday. So it's going to be important that we get a chance to melt what ice we get in between these systems, because if there's a cumulative effect, I can't imagine what it could be like out there. And I don't want to scare folks, but I want to give you the real stuff of what's happening. I don't want to downplay this because I've seen it happen here, and this is the pattern where it happens. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully it won't be as bad as some of the models have it, but at the very least I expect some downed trees and some power outages. At the very worst, it could be a situation where that happens widespread across a good part of the area and we have power outages that last for days. It would not surprise me at all with this. This is the RAP model, the rapid update cycle. This also shows the precipitation increasing tonight. You can see how it gets darker, the darker purple there. This is early tomorrow morning into mid-morning. Now by lunchtime, it's still coming down, freezing rain, a little bit of sleet across northern Virginia, but it gets all the way up across the Delmarva. But look how the wedge holds. And the RAP model has been doing a good job of establishing the low-level wedge, making it more realistic into what we're seeing. But you can see that we're going to be seeing a lot of this, and then it kind of breaks apart for tomorrow, Saturday evening. But we're still going to have some freezing drizzle, freezing fog around. That's why we got the pink specks there. Then as we go into Sunday, Valentine's Day, it was looking earlier like it might be dry, but now the newer model runs are bringing in rain and freezing rain once again as early as Sunday afternoon. That could possibly add to more ice, because what's going to happen, again, you're going to have a chilled low-level surface air just a few meters off the ground because of the ice that's already out there, and that concerns me because if we don't get much of a break, especially with no sunshine, all these clouds sticking around day after day, we could have a chance to add more ice to the problem even into Monday and even into Tuesday. This is the RAP ice forecast, and again, this is radial ice, I believe, but you can see here it may just be QPF, but I believe this corresponds to the Weather Service forecast of 1/4 of an inch or greater. And as I move my mouse through Franklin County, you can see up to 1/3 of an inch. And again, if you get to 0.25, you're going to have some issues with trees and power lines coming down. But some of these readings are getting closer to 1/2 of an inch. So that looks to be right on the money in terms of the potential. But you look at other models like the NAM, and you can see the wedge of cold air creating the problem as well. This is, let's see, the temperature in Celsius here, but it shows you the freezing. Let me go to Fahrenheit because I clicked the wrong one. There we go. Put that into motion. Now this is through tonight and Saturday. Notice that we stay in the upper 20s and lower 30s throughout the day as that wedge stays in place. All this warm air in the ocean doesn't get a chance to get in here. There isn't any warm air off to the west. There's a little bit of a heat wave of temperatures in the mid 40s through Bristol and far southwest Virginia, where it may not be that big of an issue. That's because the cold air is draining in from the northeast. This is now going into Saturday night into Sunday. May not have much falling from the sky, but we're still going to be around freezing for Saturday night. And then by the time we go into Sunday, now the models are not quite as warm for Sunday. Just a day ago, they were in the mid 40s. Now this is showing me upper 30s. So notice that's trending colder, and that's because this wedge is not going to break. It's just not going to break. So we may see waves of ice adding up, and that's why I mentioned it may be a slow motion disaster, unfortunately, for a lot of areas. This is the European model. This is the 18Z run, and this is right now going into 1 o'clock in the morning. The light, mainly light freezing rain. The bad news about light freezing rain, it freezes better because it's not splashing around all over the place. It's easier for light freezing rain in a steadier fashion to create problems. And that's why I think one of the Weather Service's forecasters went with a higher amount because of the rate of it coming down. But look what happens by 7 in the morning. We have some moderate to heavy freezing rain. And by that time, anything we get is going to be an issue, whether it's splashing around or not. I think it'll freeze, unfortunately. And so going into Saturday morning, this will be the worst of it tomorrow morning. Definitely, have your batteries in hand tonight before you go to bed. Have everything ready to go. Charge your devices. Draw some water if you need to do that. We prepared at the house today, Dad and myself. We got the generator ready, got some gas for that, and got some wood for the stove, just so we could stay warm, because we do anticipate to lose power. I think you need to expect that, so when it happens, you're not caught off guard. But the Euro has by 2 o'clock, 1 to 2 o'clock, still the freezing rain, the rain line is still down here in the North Carolina, and it's still coming down heavily, even into the afternoon. Starts to taper off a little bit into the evening, but look at the light freezing rain continuing, and the model's doing a pretty good job of picking up on that area that I like to focus on in these setups. And again, it's because of the geography. The cold air goes south of Roanoke, the sub-freezing air. It likes to hang out in Franklin County for some reason because of the way the mountains are oriented. And it hits the parkway, drains into Patrick, Floyd County, into Henry County as well. This is Saturday night. Keep in mind the winter storm warning for ice continues through noon Sunday. The Euro here has it mainly dry Sunday, but Sunday evening brings in the rain. But again, don't be surprised if it ain't rain. Don't be surprised if it is still some freezing rain as well. And this is now looking at Monday and Tuesday. Heavy moisture moving in, a low pressure system here, and what could be more freezing rain, this time a little bit farther to the north. But we'll have to wait and see if the details change with this. Just know that even more moisture is on the way for Monday and Tuesday. By that time, I think we should worry about maybe some flooding. There's something called this, and I posted this earlier, the SPIA index, and it's the Sperry Pilts Ice Accumulation Index. They developed this to figure out what the potential is for damage with ice storms. It equates wind, and it also equates the amount of radial ice that we are forecasting here. And the scale goes from anywhere between a minimal risk of damage to exposed utility systems, no alerts or advisories needed for crews, a few outages. That's kind of where we had it last night. It really wasn't too big of a deal. The sleet was actually a bigger deal overnight, except for the travel issues. To 1, some isolated or localized utility interruptions are possible, typically lasting only a few hours. Roads and bridges may become slick and hazardous. We were at the 0 to 1 overnight last night. Because now we're going into something where we expect up to a ½ inch of ice accretion, that takes us to 2. And if we get above a ½ an inch, which some of the models say, here's one of them, 0.53, 0.560, some of the other stuff here, that's the Euro high res. Let me show you this real quick. That is the new high-res NAM, which has, again, some areas here nearly a half an inch, but it's got some 1-inch amounts, which is just off the chart scary. That's the 12Z. This is the 18Z, which came out this afternoon. 0.33 Roanoke, 0.54 Franklin County, and we go right along the parkway here. You've got amounts here of over an inch. And keep in mind that is on one side, so you could have like that much. It's scary to look at some of this. So we hope that doesn't happen. And look how big of an area is getting all of this, according to the high-res NAM. So from Richmond all the way through South Central Virginia, Northwest North Carolina, this could be pretty bad. That's the 18Z. Here's the new 0Z. I'm looking at this for the first time with you here. This is through Sunday. This just came out. So it has a little bit less for Roanoke, but still some significant amounts there. That would still cause some power outages. But look at this. Floyd County, Franklin County, over a half inch to over an inch. That's an insane amount of ice. And that's why you can see on the color table down here at the bottom why that's pretty much the top of your scale that you would ever even imagine for freezing rain. I've seen this before. Sometimes it goes away as the model gets more information, but this is an Arctic cold that's hanging out here, and that's why it's so much more pronounced that every little drop of rain we freeze. Notice how it lessens a bit for the NRV. Still more of a winter weather advisory event for you. The mountain chains here look really rough. I'm afraid that Blue Ridge Parkway is going to get hit really hard. And I do think that Franklin County, again, Patrick County, where between a half inch and an inch of ice is possible according to this model. Maybe a more realistic would be up to a half inch. If you look at the FRAM estimate, that's a different way of estimating this. That's still a lot. That's double what would give you damage if you get half of an inch. So very, very scary. So let me go back to this index. That's going to put you here into the 3s and the 4s, where if you get to 4, that's prolonged and widespread utility interruptions with extensive damage to main distribution feeder lines and transmission lines and structures, outages lasting 5 to 10 days. Even a 3 is still numerous utility interruptions with some damage to main feeder lines and equipment. Tree limb damage is excessive, outage lasting 1 to 5 days. And I do think that we're in store probably, if you average everything together, look at the overall risk, I think we're a 2 or 3, 2 to 3. Hopefully not the 4 that some of the modeling has in some areas near the Virginia-North Carolina border, but some areas isolated, especially near the Parkway, again, are going to be around 4, I'm afraid, just looking at the latest data. So I know I talked a long time, almost 45 minutes, but I just wanted to tell you what's going on. I wanted you to be ready just in case. You know, we can pray this thing isn't as severe as it looks like it could be. And, you know, right now the radar isn't all that impressive. Blacksburg, again, is down. But I'll continue watching this. Probably my schedule is going to be this. So I'm going to go maybe put a quick update out on Patreon and a few tweets out tonight. And at some point I will get some rest. Folks ask me if I ever sleep. I do. Usually I sleep twice over a 24-hour period. So I can be up late at night if I need to be. And then I plan to be up early tomorrow regardless of what the sleep does tonight. So that, you know, because I think by 4, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, if the forecast is right, that's when things are going to go downhill in a real quick hurry. If you have any travel plans, I wouldn't do it. Wouldn't do it. That's tonight into tomorrow and into Sunday. Maybe Sunday afternoon, but by that time you've got to consider the possibility of some damage out there. Prepare to lose power just in case for a few days, and we'll continue to watch this. I'll continue to watch it for you. More updates. Again, all these images I've been showing you are up on my Patreon, plus lots more. But in the meantime, I'll also give you free updates as well, and we'll do videos from the home office. I'll be doing that probably just with my cell phone. I've got all the scanners on. I've got all kinds of backup lights and stuff like that, just to keep you up to date doing what I do. Stay safe, everybody.